Welcome to Parapsychology Statistics 101, and in this lesson you will learn what is a p-value and you will also learn what is statistical significance. Okay, let's start off with the basics. Well, a p-value is basically the probability of extreme or more than extreme of attaining a test statistics or the same observation by chance alone. Basically, p-values are indications of evidence against the null hypothesis. In statistics, a null hypothesis is basically the hypothesis that says that there is no effect or that there is no change. It is basically the opposite of the hypothesis that is being tested. In the case of parapsychology, the null hypothesis is basically the hypothesis that says that there is no evidence for side effect and that the test statistics that has been observed is nothing but sheer chance. On the other hand, the alternative hypothesis is the opposite of the null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis simply says that there is evidence of side phenomena and that the test statistics that has been observed is unlikely due to chance. Now, the concept unlikely due to chance is the key term to understand statistical significance. Statistical significance is actually an observation that is unlikely due to chance. Now, one of the most common misconceptions that people get with statistics and statistical significance is that statistical significance does not say that the observation is not due to chance. It also does not say that the observation that has been observed is practically significant, meaning that it has practical purposes. Now, what I mean by this is that statistical significance basically says that what is being observed is unlikely due to chance, not that it isn't. Now, that is the key term to understand in statistics. Statistical significance is basically another term for saying that the observation is unlikely due to chance. Now, the question of whether the observation is practically significant has more to do with the effect size rather than the p-value. The p-value, as I said before, is only a measurement of the evidence against the null hypothesis, meaning that the p-value measures how good or weak the evidence for the null hypothesis, which is that there is no side phenomenon, is. Now, there are misconceptions regarding what the p-value actually means. The p-value is not the probability of the null hypothesis being true. In other words, it is not the probability of obtaining the same observation if the null hypothesis, which is saying that there is no side phenomenon, was true. Now, another misconception regarding p-value is the probability of the same observation happening again on the next experiment. The p-value does not say the probability of attaining the same observation for the next experiment. The p-value only states the observation of obtaining the same result, extreme or more extreme, by chance alone. Knowing these misconceptions will certainly make you a good statistician, and it can also help you distinguish the bullshit going on with the researchers claiming that statistical significance and practical significance are the same thing, which certainly they are not. Now, you may ask yourself, how do we know that the result is statistically significant based on the p-value calculation? Good question. Well, statistically speaking, statistical significance is based on a subjective threshold of what the null hypothesis should be rejected on. The null hypothesis is rejected by the significance level of the test. The significance level is basically you can call it a borderland between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. If the p-value is lower than the significance level that is put in the test, then the null hypothesis can be safely rejected. The common standard that statisticians use for statistical significance is 0.05. Some statisticians prefer 0.01 or lower, but the common threshold that statisticians use is 0.05. Now what this means is that the p-value has to be lower than 0.05 in order for the observation to be statistically significant. If the p-value is, let's say, 0.051, then it is said that the observation is not statistically significant, even though it is really close to the significance level. Now, in cases of parapsychology, the evidence for psychic phenomenon is based on the null hypothesis rejection according to the statistical significance level of the test. What this means is that the evidence are based on p-values that are lower than the significance level of the test. So if the significance level was 0.05, then evidence for psychic phenomena will be when the p-value is less than 0.05. That is actually how statisticians and parapsychologists alike find evidence in statistics. The evidence for statistics is purely based on the rejection of the null hypothesis according to the significance level. Another simpler way to think of it is simply saying yourself, P is low, null must go. Interestingly, the smaller the p-value gets, the more stronger the evidence becomes. Meaning that the more smaller the p-value 0.0 blah 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 gets, the more stronger the evidence becomes for psychic phenomena. Now the reason why it becomes stronger is because the lower the p-value gets, the more unlikely it is due to chance. If the p-value was, say, 0.001, then that means that the evidence is really strong, because the odds of that occurring is much more unlikely than the odds of an observation occurring at the 0.05 p-value. Now, putting that aside, you should have learned that the p-value is basically the probability of obtaining the same observation, extreme or more extreme, by chance alone. You should also have learned that the statistical significance means that the observation is unlikely due to chance, and not the misconception that it isn't due to chance. And another thing you should have learned about is that the evidence in statistics are typically based on the rejection of the null hypothesis according to the significance level of the test. Alright guys, well that's the end of the lesson for Parapsychology Statistics 101, and if you like my presentation, please leave a like. If you have any questions or concerns, please leave it on the comment section below. And if you would like to talk about this, you can leave me a Google Plus chat. And if you want to talk about anything regarding parapsychology, feel free to ask me. And thanks for watching.